Right. Hello and welcome to our interview with multi-published and multi-award-winning author Laurie Foster as part of the Romantic Rendezvous Lockdown. Today I'll be talking with Laurie about writing, reading and romance and what's coming up next for her. Laurie, hello to you and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I don't get to connect with Australian romance readers very often, so this is a treat for me.
Well, feel free to tell us when you want to come down.
I think everything's shut down right now, so I don't think it'd be too easy.
So you're in Ohio right now?
Correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you live in a city or a small town?
We live in a small suburb, a small town. So, sometimes in my books you'll see where I talk about a cow that got loose. That's where we live. If a cow gets loose, it's big. It's a big story. So.
And what do you love about living there in Ohio?
Well, one thing I like is that everyone, pretty much everyone. Because I have three sons, for the longest time I was known as Aaron's mom, Jake's mom, Mason's mom. They were all in sports. I helped out a lot at the schools. I try to separate my writing life from my mom life, basically from everything. If I'm not directly invited to talk about books, I don't really talk about books. So it's really nice that the people here are okay with that. It's not something, occasionally it comes up, but not real often. And I like that it's a small community. I like that there are churches around every corner. One thing I really like is that there are people of all levels here. So, we have some politicians, we have some well-to-do people, we have people that live, on much more meager means, and everybody's nice. So, I think that's pretty great. You get a nice view of the world in a small town.
Sounds lovely. So talking about, you separate your reading and your writing and your mum life. I read that you didn't always know you wanted to write and that you started writing later. What was it that actually got you into writing?
So, when I was younger, I didn't even like to read. To me, the books that you're assigned in school or the books that are recommended by literary critics don't always encourage a love of reading. I think some of those books are very off-putting. Many of them are very, very depressing. They're about the worst parts of life. And so I didn't even really like to read. And then one day I was sick and one of my sisters, brought me over a bag of paperback romance novels. And I sort of did the cheat thing where I flipped through until I found a sex scene. And I read that, but I got so invested in the characters that I had to go back to the beginning to see how they had gotten to that point. And before I was well, I had gallbladder surgery. I think before I was well, I had read every single book in the bag. And I no sooner finished all of those than I wanted to write my own, because there were certain things that in my mind I wish had gone differently. I loved them. I loved every single one of them, variety of authors. But I kept thinking, oh, I wish this would have happened, or I wish that would have happened. So then I didn't really know romance novels were a thing. There was a girl in our high school, this was a million years ago, who used to read Harlequin romances. And I always just thought it was sad. She would sit there while everybody else was chatting and visiting, and she'd be reading a book. And I always felt bad for her and thought she was a very lonely person. Now I'm that person. If I've got a choice of reading a book or hanging out with people, I would rather be reading a book. So, I kind of just segued right into it.
Fair enough. So how does it feel to be able to say that you have had over 100 books published? Many writers only dream of those kind of.
We were discussing on Twitter the other day that romance authors seem to be a heck of a lot more prolific than many other authors in different genres. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe it's because we love writing relationships so much. I don't think that writing romance is easier. I think it's just more compelling, maybe. And so I know a lot of authors that are on track for that, so that by the time they're my ripe old age of, 61? I think 61. I can never remember. I think they'll probably have 100 also, or close to it, the ones that stick to it and have some success. So I tend to lose track of how many. My husband keeps track better than I do. But yeah, it's kind of neat. It's an accomplishment. It really screams old person. When you say I've written 100 books, people think, well, she must be really old, which is true.
Proof's in the pudding. So in exciting news, you have a brand new book out in market this week. Tell us a little bit about the Somerset Girls. Whose story is it? And what people can expect when they buy the book, apart from your happy ever after, of course.
Okay, so here's the book. This is the Somerset Girls. I had to work really hard to get this coonhound on the cover, red-bone coonhound, because the art department, which is wonderful, just sort of picked red dogs, which there was a dachshund on there at first, and I'm like, no, it has to be a coonhound. So, I really point out the dog in it, but I tend to write in two different romantic genres. So I write romantic suspense with my mass markets, and then I write small town women's fiction-y type books in my trade series. So this is a new one. It's set around a rescue animal, Fresh Start Rescue Animal Farm, where they bring in animals that have been mistreated. Now I chose that because animals are near and dear to my heart. They matter a lot to me. My husband and I do a lot of fundraisers for our local animal shelter, which is amazing. It's a no-kill shelter. And so I always like to showcase, to me, that all animals, not just dogs and cats, all animals want to be loved and cared for. So while that's a romance, it's all set around a rescue farm. And it shows you how the different people react to that, how you can meet someone who doesn't seem like the right person to you, but you see what a big giving heart they have, and they become the right person. So it was kind of all about two sets of, I'm terrible at summarizing, absolutely terrible at this, but it's two different characters, two sisters who are very, very different, each sort of stuck in a role that isn't really who she is, but the parents sort of designated this is the serious one, this is the party girl, and they sort of walk the line of fulfilling that role that their mother assigned to them. Well, actually, they're very deep, much deeper, and have much more fully fleshed personalities, and they each find the right man for them.
Great.
I have to just cut that off, or I would ramble endlessly, because I never could synopsize a story.
Well, I look forward to reading it. It's on my list.
Thank you.
Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the next book. You've called it a benefit book. Would you explain to the readers what that means and why you've written it? You touched on it a little bit a moment ago.
Yeah, so every year, I have a big event that I have every year called the Reader-Author Get-Together, which this year had to be canceled because of the COVID-19 pandemic and all that. And in coordination with that, we have raffles at the event, and we donate that money to Cancer-Free Kids, which is sort of a research place that works on gentler treatments for children with cancer. Last year, we were able to donate, I think it was $32,000 from our raffles to Cancer-Free Kids. And then at the same time, I write a benefit book every year. This year will be the last year that those benefit books are tied to my Buckhorn series. But I write a benefit book every year where the advance and all the royalties for the book, for the life of the book, and so far all of my books are still living, meaning you can still access them. But my husband went to get me a copy. So this is Jack's. And so all the proceeds from this book, other than what the publisher takes, goes to a no-kill animal shelter. It's the Animal Adoption Foundation. And I sell those at my event in a very limited print. They're available digital everywhere, but at a very limited print at my event. Since I couldn't sell them in print at my event this year, I'm sort of selling them online very quickly, with all of the money going to an animal shelter. So they all go to the same animal shelter. If anyone looks on my website under the benefit books, they'll see that I've been doing this for, 10, 12 years, I think. So each year, with different publishers. So when I was with Berkeley did it, and then when I switched to Harlequin did it, and they draw up a special contract for me. So the money never comes to me, it just goes directly to the shelter.
That's absolutely fabulous. And, the recipients of that would be so grateful if they could, talk to you.
They are very grateful. And I feel like I'm in a unique position to be able to do things like that where not everyone is. So I don't expect everyone to be able to donate that kind of time and attention to an animal shelter, but it's nice if people do anything they're able to do, volunteer their time, drop off food, you know, whatever they might be able to contribute if they're not in the same position as me.
So apart from writing your romance books and your benefit book, you're an incredibly motivated and busy person with that going on. And so how have you been with quarantine and COVID-19? Have you found yourself wanting to read more, write more?
You know, I've done a lot more rereading. So I've just really plowed through a bunch. I reread the entire Joanna Lindsay Mallory series, which is one of my all-time favorite series. And then I'm in the process of reading others of her books right now. Love everything she ever wrote. And I read all the early Julie Garwood historical romance. I guess because I write contemporary stories, I mostly enjoy reading historical stories. It's sort of a complete separation from what I do. So I've been doing a ton of rereading, not a whole lot of new reading, although I'm anxiously awaiting Chris Rice's new Burning Girl book, which will be out in August. That's on my cannot wait to get list. So, you know, and that's not much of a romance, it's more of a suspense. So I pretty much separate what I read from what I write. Generally, the way that I stop plotting books is we go to the theater and watch a movie. Of course, we can't do that right now. So each evening we've got so many, you know, we got Netflix and Crackle and Amazon Prime and everything else you can imagine where we can find a movie to watch in the evening, usually about 7 o'clock or so. We sit down and watch a movie together. That sort of takes my brain out of the book and allows me to wind down so I can actually sleep that night. But January 1st, I was in a car wreck. A guy ran a stop sign, an innocent mistake. He was, you know, he looked one way, he didn't look the other, and plowed into the side of me. So I broke my right shoulder, my right wrist. That put me really behind. So I can't say that I did a ton of writing through the entire pandemic, but I did do a ton of writing trying to get caught up once I could use my arm again.
And do you want to announce the name of that new book?
The new book, one that I just finished. Are you talking about the benefit book or the one that I just
No,
finished?
the one that will come out in January.
Okay, that will be, I should have remembered that title. It's CADE, C-A-D-E. It's the McKenzie family. I don't remember the whole title yet because I haven't gotten a cover for it yet. Yeah. But it'll be on my website soon. It was supposed to come out in November, but then it got bumped to January since I missed 2 months with a broken arm.
You still did a great job to get it written with all of that happening to you. So,
well, I think I got so antsy not being able to write that once I had to use a left-handed mouse for the longest time because that small movement with a broken wrist just didn't work. And I was sort of finger pecking with one hand for a while there. And once I could actually use both hands, I'm a better person when I'm able to write every day. And I wasn't able to write for a while. So I think once I could finally get back to it, I really jumped into it and was really motivated.
So let's turn to your reading habits when you're between books. Who are the favorite authors that you have?
All right, well, Chris Rice, I just mentioned him, Christopher Rice. His Burning Girl series is absolutely excellent. I love it. A lot of times, like I say, I'll reread Joanna Lindsay or Julie Garwood. New historical romance that I love is Kerrigan Byrne. She writes some really fantastic, gritty, wounded heroes that are still really awesome and get a wonderful woman. And Elizabeth Hoyt writes her Mayfair Square, I think it's called Mayfair Square, series is phenomenal. I love it a lot. When I'm in the mood to read contemporary, Jill Shalvis, I think everyone reads Jill Shalvis, you know, she's very awesome. Lots of humor, you know, to keep you chuckling as you read. So those are my go-tos, you know, that I read. I'm sure there's a million I'm missing because I have a bloated bookshelf, you know, that I go to. But those are my go-tos for sure.
How do you research your novels?
Well, you know, it depends on which series I'm working on. So I did an MMA series, and I researched that by already loving MMA, mixed martial arts. I and my whole family are big fans of it. We've been to live events. We've been to after parties. Excuse me. Drink real quick. I don't have COVID. Just so everyone knows. So I did some interviews with different fighters. You know, that was really fun, and made those particular series extra fun to write. Actually, the second book in my new series that comes after ARRRLD, he teaches MMA. So I'm sure I'll have a little more excuse to glom some MMA when I'm reading it. Excuse me, when I did a series for human trafficking, there are a lot of headlines you can read and get involved in, and you don't copy a headline, you don't copy that particular story, but it gives you insight into how police handled it, how the women were rescued, where they went, sometimes children, not just women, sometimes boys, girls, forced labor. People tend to think of human trafficking as all a sexual thing, but it's not. It's also forced labor in many, many cases. And it's one of the things that drives me nuts right now. I can't imagine anybody thinking someone else should have to serve them that way without them voluntarily saying that they wanted to and being paid for it. I can't wrap my brain around anyone thinking another human being is not another human being with all the same rights and feelings. So I've written a couple series on that, on human trafficking. It's heartbreaking, but I enjoy the research. I've talked to women from women's shelters who were rescued. I've talked to the police officers that had task force set up to work through that. So the research can get really, really interesting. These days, with social media being what it is, if I have a certain job or career, a lot of times you can ask online and you can find someone that works in that field. You know, if I have a medical question, there's almost always a nurse or a doctor who will answer my Facebook post that says, anybody here know how to treat fatal gun wounds? You know, that sort of thing. There's almost always someone who will pipe up and have a lot of experience to help with it.
People are generous if you remember to ask, aren't they, often?
Yeah, they really are. My readers are the best readers in the world. They're all fantastic. I'm very, very fortunate.
Have any of your characters been inspired by people that you know?
No, not really. I try to veer very far away from actual characters, but I will say a lot of the humor in my books comes directly from my husband or my sons. So I'll hear, they're all comedians, and I'll hear one of them say a very guy thing that I think is also hilarious, and it'll often end up in a book attributed to an entirely different character. But I have 3 pretty awesome sons, and my husband has kept me laughing for 41 years. So, you know, a lot of times I can go back to them and steal a quote or a scenario where they were joking with each other or something and put that in a book. But as far as actual characters, I will say that let me have that again real quick. In the Somerset Girls, in this book, there's a little girl in here named Sadie who had a terrible mom. She's living with her dad now. But I based that little girl off of a girl who's a friend of the family. Her name's Ruby. I call her Ruby Doobie. And she's such a precocious, smart, adorable, cute, funny with a quirky fashion sense that I modeled the little girl off of her, strictly off of like the red hair, the blue eyes, the fashion sense, how much she loves animals. So I did that, but her background and everything about her has nothing to do with Ruby. Ruby has an awesome mom. So does that make sense? I sort of, because it's been a long time since I've had a 6-year-old child, you know, so that made it easier for me to remember their size and how they reacted to things.
No, it's not. Sorry, that's my sound. If one of your books could be made into a movie, have you ever thought which one you'd like it to be?
Yeah, there's 2. So 2 that I would have loved to have had made into movies. Mostly, I think that because so many readers have said, why hasn't this been made into a movie? So When You Dare, which was the first human trafficking story I did, Dare was amazing, Molly was amazing. So I really liked the 2 of them, and I always thought that that would make a good movie, only because when I first decided to write that book, I had seen, what was that movie called, Taken, with Liam Neeson. And Liam Neeson has to save his daughter from human traffickers. So he's running down a hallway and he's seeing one woman chained to a bed after another, but none of them are his daughter. And he can't rescue all of them because that might alert people, and he's just trying to find his daughter. It broke my heart so badly, even though it was fiction, because I was already very aware of human trafficking, that I wanted to write a character that would rescue all of them. There would be no woman left behind. They would all get rescued. And so that inspired me to write that particular book. He kills a lot of people, and I love it because I think a lot of people need to be shot in the head, you know, that are human traffickers, forgive me. But, you know, I think if you're going to do that sort of thing, you just need to be gone. And so I loved writing that book. I thought it was gritty enough for a movie, but I'm not sure it would ever be tackled. And then my second MMA series, which was the Ultimate series that opened with No Limits. So many readers have said, I wish you would have these. Readers don't always understand that it's not my choice to make a book into a movie. They think that I can just say, I'm going to make it into a movie, and I can. And of course, that's not how it works. But they'll say, I really wish you would have this made into a movie. And then they have these really high-end actors they want to play the roles. I'm like, yeah. I don't think Ted Cruz wants to come to a movie for me. But be really sweet. You know, I would enjoy it. Although I would probably go with Ryan Reynolds over Tom Cruise.
Yeah, he's nicely rich and real, isn't he?
Yes, he is, and he's hilariously funny and built really fine.
And he can dance.
Yeah, all of that. He's the whole package.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, I have a couple more questions before I let you go. It's been such fun to get to know you. If you were able to have a dinner party with no limits, who would you invite?
I actually have a lot of dinner parties. So I have a party every year where I invite my local author friends. So that includes Tony Blake, Jules Bennett, Jen Stark, Jessica Lemon. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. We usually end up with about 10, 12 people. And they're all local to me, so that they're within an hour, hour and a half driving distance. I always enjoy that. It's fun to sit down with other authors and just hash out authorly problems. If I could invite anyone, I would include Jill Shalvis in that, and Christopher Rice. I'd love to have them sitting down with me and being able to just chit chat. If we're talking people dead or alive, Martin Luther King, I would love to be able to sit down and talk with for a little while. Mother Teresa, I would love to sit down and talk with for a while. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting her name. Margaret Thatcher. I am fascinated with Margaret Thatcher, so I would love to sit down and chat with her. There's a lot of historical figures that I think would have some really, really unique perspectives. Not sure I'd want them all in the same room at the same time, because I would be too divided. I wouldn't be able to sit and ask as many questions as I'd like. But that would be a starting point for me.
Sounds like a fun dinner party. There's a lovely piece of art on the wall behind you. Are you in your dining room or your office?
Yes, so that's just artwork in my dining room. We had a new house built, was it 3 years ago? My husband's sitting right here, so I'm not talking to the wall. Like 3 years ago, we had a house built. He has some knee issues. I have some lung issues, which is why I was coughing, not COVID. And so we moved from a 3-level house. We used to be, his office was on the top floor, middle floor was living, and my office was in the basement. And it just became too much. I couldn't breathe by the time I went up 2 flights of steps. His knees wouldn't let him go down 2 flights of steps. So we built a ranch, and I don't mind saying I had a designer come in and do most of the work for me. I was under deadline. I'm always under deadline. So the house was sort of one of those things where I went around and said, I like this door, I like this foyer, I want this main bathroom, I want these other bathrooms. And I just left it to a builder to piece it all together for me. And then we had a designer come in and do most of the decorating for us. So I'm very comfortable with it. She did a great job. Although that's probably not a picture I normally would have chosen, but it's grown on me and I really like it now.
That's a lovely piece of work.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's pretty much me. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the readers before I let you go?
I will tell Australian readers that I don't know if they travel this far, but we have our event every year. It's very, very affordable for readers. It's $100 for readers, and that covers a Wednesday party, Thursday party, Friday party, Saturday party. All your meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner on Friday and Saturday. There's a restaurant in the hotel for the other days. We have breakout workshops. You get a loaded goodie bag, usually with 6 to 8 free books in it. 2 massive book signings with, I think, 60 authors. I think that's what we had. Since we had to cancel this year, we're basically just transitioning everyone from this year to 2021. So some of our authors are Sylvia Day, Jill Shalvis, Rayanne Thane, Brenda Novak, Kerrigan Byrne, who I haven't met yet, but since I'm such a big fan, I'm really looking forward to that one. Laura Lee. So we have a wide variety of authors, and it's loads of fun. It's like a giant tea party, except with 500 people. So we max out super, super fast. And if anyone wants to go, if they feel like traveling to the States around the beginning of June, you know, they would probably very much enjoy the event. Our tickets go on sale March 3rd.
That's a good one to remember, everybody. All right. Laurie, thank you so much for today. For our readers, don't forget that you can connect with Laurie at lauriefoster.com, as well as on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. And if you didn't know it, Laurie also has a podcast that you can subscribe for, so to get some more insights on this. Laurie, thank you so much for joining us today, and I know our readers will enjoy hearing from you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Trying to see if that's close enough.
Needs to go back a little bit. And up, that's it. That's our treasure hunt piece.
Okay, good.
Thank you so
much. I had
much.
it right here, ready to go, but I wanted to make sure I remembered.
No, thank you. Well, Laurie, thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of your day, and yeah, we'll let you know when this one's up.
And I think it's your bedtime, right?
Almost.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Take care.
Lovely to have met you. Bye-bye.